Hey POE students, just want to take a second to go over activity 1.2.5 and touch on some of the high points for building, some things that might be worth noting. So one thing that's worth noting is that if you notice that in the lab you're going to actually have to use a VEX motor, and so you want to make sure that you look at the back of the case and you want to find the wording 2-wire motor, okay, 383. So you can use this motor here. It is easy to confuse a servo module for a motor because they look very much the same. They're just a little bit differently sized, but you do want to make sure that you take a moment and look for um, the label on there and make sure that it is identified as a motor. I believe there's also another motor out there too that's a little bit smaller than this one, so it may look even more like the servo module, but you want to make sure that it says motor on the case. Okay. The other thing about motors is that in order to bolt the motor to the frame, you have to use these inserts right here. Okay, this is part of the case. And so you want to make sure that when you're doing this, that you use the correct screw. So your conventional screws that we've been always using for all the stuff we've been doing so far will not fit. They're too large. They simply won't screw into the threads here. But what you want to do is you want to look for some of these motor screws, and I'll have a container that says that's labeled motor screws, and it will have like a white head on it. And these will actually thread into these inserts without too much trouble, okay? You may also see a screw that looks kind of like brass colored too. And so it may not be white, but it'll be smaller than all the other conventional screws. You may see some that have like this kind of red kind of goop on the end, and that's just some thread locker. It will kind of feel firm when you thread it in there. It'll kind of like resist a little bit as you tighten it, but it is the correct threads for that motor module. So you want to make sure that you're using the correct screws, okay? There's also different lengths, and you could probably get away with using the shorter lengths on this lab as well, okay? The next thing is that you're going to use a breadboard for this lab, and you're going to use a push button switch. And so the push button switch is simply going to go into your breadboard. So these 3 tongs can simply go into any 3 rows that you would like, and then you would use some jumper wires. So you're going to use the black wire that's on the switch here. So you're going to make sure that whatever wire you plug into the row matches either black or white. So we're staying away from the center, okay? And so I'll use this red jumper wire for the white wire. And this is how our lab is going to get power. So we'll actually hook power to these leads using a power supply, okay? So again, some things to note. If you have any questions when you're building, as always, make sure that you ask.